Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast, and we are back again after a stupendous victory against Tottenham at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, 3 Point Lane for 3 years in a row. George, I know it's early in Canada. I know you're a bit tired, but obviously you're still very happy after yesterday's performance.
It's been a good work week. It's a good start to the work week. I feel like everybody can kind of I don't know, can kind of relate, after a big win at a top six club, you always have a skip in your step. You're always like, okay, I'm ready for the day. I'm ready for a little bit of banter with people who might support other clubs. And it's even better when it's kind of your rivals like that. And I just felt even the type of performance that we saw and just how huge it was. I mean, on the day, it's just a lot of emotions. We'll sit here and we'll talk tactics about how we ended up really getting that victory. But I think in general, the more I've thought about it, mate, how huge that win is in the context of what we've got coming up and what we've actually already done. So in terms of that initial fixture pile-on list, uh, it was a massive, massive deal, especially with the Brighton draw and how we had drawn
Yep.
that game. I mean, to go and draw Spurs would have been, I mean, not unacceptable, but it really would have dented issues in terms of how we're going to sustain this challenge with City. And I think it was incredibly important to maintain that distance, and especially before you go to visit them. And it just steads you in the best light. So from a footballing perspective, proud of the boys. From a player perspective, proud of the boys. And I think just in general, in terms of the club and how we're trying to keep on track this season, I'm incredibly proud.
Yeah, it's fantastic to get the victory, of course. There is no Alex today, unfortunately. He's got the sniffles, so get well soon to Alex in the comments. But listen, we've got so much to break down. There was so many aspects of this game, even though it wasn't I wouldn't say it's an amazing performance, it was an amazing result. From the starting lineup itself, Mikel going for Kai again up front, not jumping him to midfield. Were you surprised with the lineup, anyways, by playing Trossard as a 10 and starting Kai? Obviously, Jorginho Partey was expected, but the front four especially.
Not entirely, because I don't know if I saw it as clearly as that personally. Like I felt like Trossard was a little bit more false nine in general, and they really
Yeah, at
interchanged.
times.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it was a front two partnership, which is more what I suspected. Like whenever I've had
yeah.
like potential lineups with Trossard and Kai, it was always as a striking partnership. So there's times when one's a second striker, and there's ones that the other one's a striker. I mean, ultimately, what I was surprised with was um, how often Kai Havertz really kept to the right hand side, and that was part of, for
Yeah.
me, part of the balance and part of the fluidity that we saw that was really good. So I think we've somehow garnered a little bit more respect off the ball on the left that allows Kai Havertz not to drift to that side consistently. And I think part of the reason is I've always felt that Kai Havertz individually sees the pitch better from the right hand side. And he's fine to receive on the left, but I don't think he's as decisive. I think he's a little bit less sure of his actions on the left. And then when he goes to move to the right, I find that he's a lot more authoritative. He's a lot more sure about when to go out wide, when to receive inside, when to do some of his movements. They're a lot more clear, purposeful, and aggressive on the right. And that for me, striking up kind of a pretty good partnership with Bukayo Saka, I think there's the budding of a really good relationship there. If we can
Hmm.
continue to have a left-hand side that needs a little bit more support, in my opinion, right now. I think it's great off the ball, and I think Yuri and Timber did a phenomenal job at left back, locking down that
Fantastic.
position. And then Trossard, in terms of his diligence out of possession to really fill in when people had vacated the area, meant that that left-hand side felt very secure. But in terms of an attacking sense, it carried actually most of our threat in the first half. If you go
Hmm.
back to
Yeah,
watch
it
it,
did.
I mean, for all of the Hollywood miss of Gabriel Martinelli, he was our most potent attacker in that first half. And I thought Trossard was a big part of giving that platform, but there's no denying that that side was a little bit more diligent and a little bit more regimented. Whereas obviously on the right, we have a little bit more fluidity, a little bit more rotations. But the right, I thought, struggled a bit, and that came a little bit more from Ben White, who didn't have the best of games. And you could just see at times the passing was a little bit off on the right hand side, and it felt a little bit more looking for transitions and loose balls and moments. My only regret is I know that Mikel said that he had to change plan because of all the injuries, but you could just tell, mate, the one or two times that we pressured Van de Ven, he lost his head, and I wish we had the people
Mhm.
back, because the game plan that I could see in those little few moments when we did press was
Yeah,
beautiful. So it was a
yeah.
more conservative performance, absolutely played on the transition, absolutely played on the counter, and was a little bit more safety conservative first and picking our moments. And I think that's what
Mhm.
maybe gave the impression of a mature performance in general.
Yeah, I think Gary Neville loved the performance,
Yeah.
and I think he loved it most because it was kind of his style, their style, so Alex Ferguson's style of play. Where obviously they had great players, but in the big games against Arsenal specifically, they were not scared to sit back, soak up pressure, and hit you in the counter attack. And
Yeah.
we've seen it as Arsenal fans. So you can now see Mikel's all the managers he's worked under, from Wenger to Guardiola to also Moyes, comes into play. And you can see it in games like this where he's not scared to just go out there and get a result. And I think that's perfectly fine, by the way. I wasn't annoyed by our style of play whatsoever because I'm like, look, this is a game where I want 3 points. I don't care how we play. I don't care how we get it. It could be an own goal for all SK. But we're trying to go for a title and we know we can play the style of play, but can we go get a result when we have to adapt? Last year, were we able to win without Martin Odegaard? We weren't put in that's a scenario. We weren't put in a scenario without Declan Rice either. Your start midfield's not there, yet you're still able to adapt. You're still able to go over there and get the 3 points. You're right. I think the left-hand side was definitely impressive because, Yuri and Timber, what a player. He's so composed. His dual winning is so aggressive as well. I love the fact that he was able to just grab the Vicario as well and get out of my face. I like that aggression plays naturally as well. And I also feel like now you've got the question of, when Calafiori, when he does return from his injury, Zinchenko was injured as well. Out of Calafiori and Timber, that left back situation is going to be very interesting. Because you've got two high quality players there, slightly different because obviously Calafiori is left footed, he can play a ball with a natural left back. But Timber, in terms of passing going forwards, how composed he is in the overlap as well, which I think surprised a lot of people, and just how composed he is on the ball in those tight areas. Do you think when Timber's fit, also when Calafiori is fit, that there's going to be more of a battle there, or do you think Timber's going to make it his own?
I definitely think Calafiori is going to make it a battle, no doubt.
Oh, wow.
I think
Which
that
is very fantastic because Timber's fantastic as well.
yeah, no, he's incredible, but I also don't think that they can't play together, as I've said for a while. And I think that Timber is definitely a player that has gone out of the minds of people, and he needed a performance
Yeah.
like that, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because there was some weird conclusions that I was seeing in terms of, is he the same? I mean, there's always that narrative post injury. Has he looked physically the same? Has he done this and has he done that? And I just felt like, no, I've seen the same player. All I'm seeing is the lack of rhythm, and that comes from just not playing competitive minutes. And he was out for a year. I mean, it had nothing to do for me with fitness. It had nothing to do with a technique or a physical loss. It was purely understanding rhythm. And I think anybody that's played football at any level knows, you don't play with your friends in the park and then you suddenly come back after 2-3 months of not playing. You look like crap in terms of your touch. It's off, and it's a little bit more surface level than I think some of the analysis went with him. And he just had a brilliant performance. I thought Lockdown also did quite a bit of stuff in terms of bursting into the half space and providing an option to underlap and supporting the attack. I definitely felt like he was a willing runner, but I think what was really nice to see was his defensive performance, because there were just some moments in the last couple games and in preseason that I felt like there was some defensive errors, which you don't associate with Yuri and Timber, because all that we had seen in our very short cameos was just a presence that was so secure, out of possession. I forget who we were facing, but do you remember that one time that Yuri and Timber does a beautiful halfway turn in our own box and then just kind of over?
Oh, was it Leon and Leverkusen?
Yes, I think it was Leon.
Mhm.
And he overplays it a little bit, and look, you like to see it in a preseason game, but I think once the season comes, you need to iron out those things, and you don't like seeing that, generally speaking. And I just felt like he was so secure. That wasn't the case here. Very in control of his actions, and he showed the right amount of aggression, I think. When you talk about, we're going to talk about all the yellow cards and how the ref, I felt lost the game a little bit. But Timber, for me, there was definitely a point after causing the flashpoint, walks away and then continues playing, and I didn't see a carryover of emotion. For example, if you're looking at a Bruno Guimaraes, who will have that type of play, that will play on his mind and that dictates his actions. I think after the scuffle, which he stands up for himself, he's aggressive, he's in the moment, very much emotion showing. Afterwards, it's very icy cool. And that's just his personality. And I think that,
Stoic.
yeah, and that mentality for me gives me confidence. It gives me confidence in moments when there's a little bit of a scuffle, quote unquote. And that could be even in play, right? There's moments when maybe there's a bit of chaos, and I just find he takes authority in those moments. And I think that's the leadership quality that really Mikel has highlighted in the past. And so when you're looking at maybe the difference between him and Calafiori and how they're going to compete, I mean, Calafiori is similarly a really top mental profile. These are two players that I just feel like add a lot to Arsenal's ability to control the emotions of games. And I think they offer different things at left back, but I think they also offer different things to the team a little bit more. You know, Calafiori for me is probably someone who's actually far more of a maverick than Jurrien Timber is in general. I think Jurrien Timber is more of the steadfast dueler that can have moments of really nice creative passing in the middle and final third specifically. I think his passing really becomes inventive once he crosses the first phase, which is really ironic. Like, I think in the first phase, he's almost too conservative, Jurrien Timber. When he receives it, it's very simple. He's able to turn out of trouble, no problem. So he offers a lot in terms of his angles, but in terms of his actual passing, it's fairly simple. It's short. It's safe. And then once it crosses to the middle third and into the final third, you see a lot more willingness to find people, more creativity, more varied passing in terms of going a little bit longer. And so that's something that he offers. And then Calafiori is a little bit more of kind of the more dominant ball carrier, whereas in build-up, he's incredibly varied. He's incredibly able to dictate tempo, Calafiori. Whereas I think once he crosses that first phase, Calafiori is more of a carrier. And you're going to see a lot more confident carries and layoffs as opposed to maybe some of the varied passing. So it's different strengths, right? So there's definitely going to be times when I think Mikel prefers one or the other for the opponent. But again, I'm going to end on this. I really think that there's a possibility and there's a potential for the two to play together over the course of the season.
And that could, of course, be Timber right back as well. Because, yesterday Ben White did struggle. And, when I think Calafiori is fit and available, you got Zinchenko, you got the ability to put him on the right-hand side. We're not seeing that as much, but I think we saw it in that Emirates Cup game against Lyon, and he's very good in the overlap as well. He's very comfortable, as you said, when he gets past the defensive third. And that's why the shots of him playing in midfield aren't out of bounds. Maybe not in a game like this, but in the future, and there's certain games that, you have injuries or players need you resting, maybe in the Champions League, you can go for it. And I'll be surprised to see what Mikel does, obviously, on Thursday. But in this specific game here, the front line was effective in a sense. We didn't score from the front line specifically itself in terms of our open play, but to get the corner from Havertz. Do you think Kai now, starting up front, obviously playing on the right-hand side, dropping a deeper as well, was that one of his best performances without a goal? Because I looked at his stats post the game of his entire form of 2024 in the Premier League, and it's very consistent. Very consistent. His goals, his assists, but it's also good performances there without scoring and assisting. And I think fans now are starting to appreciate him more than ever. And it's like, how much can change in a year? Because this time last year, September, I'm pretty sure there was a lot of discussions on this channel, on most Arsenal channels and most Arsenal fans. What's Kai? Where does he play? What can you do? I feel like now there's certainty. Okay, this is a player who's in our team, who plays in that specific role there. And he's doing very well. And I think his ability to make something out of nothing is very nice. I think he won 8 aerial duels as well. So he's using his height now. He's using his power and size. And I think someone said it once upon a time where Kai feels like a player who, he is 6'5", but he doesn't realise he's 6'5". Like, he plays like he's still 5'8" or something. When he realises his power and frame and he starts using it more often, he can cause anyone issues. Even the way he was able to hold off Van de Ven to go and earn that corner, play the pass over, I think was a Saka. Again, was fantastic as well. What do you make of the frontline performance, especially Kai specifically, or did you, and Saka as well, and Martinelli completing 6 out of 8 dribbles?
I think the big story for me was Gabriel Martinelli in terms of teasing that out. I think Kai's been really consistent. He's grown a voice, very consistent in the team. So regardless of what you may,
do you see when he went over to the fans and started getting them going again?
Yeah, and look, but I mean, I think he's found a club that he's found a connection to as well. For as much as we've done a lot of rehabilitation for Kai Havertz, I felt like there's just some things that you can see, I know it's stupid, but even on social media I forget who he was talking to, but he's like, no, I don't. They're like, did you talk to Timo Werner? And he's like, no, I don't talk about
Spurs.
Yeah, I don't talk to Spurs players. And the way that he's so engaged. I mean, I think the first time that I saw this mindset from Kai Havertz had come from that Newcastle performance. That was the first one that I felt like, okay, he's up for the fight as much as he is to try to prove himself in the team. And and that's continued. And I think that's the credit that I'll always give Kai Havertz. For as much as I may still question, I don't think he will ever be the clinical striker that we'll need to solve moments. And I don't think it's fair to put that on him. What you can't deny is the consistency in terms of his output, in terms of his application, and in terms of what he offers us as a tactical Swiss Army knife. I mean, I think that's actually really the biggest thing that Kai Havertz has given Arsenal. Because when you're talking about playing with injuries and you're talking about striker, again, I don't even think this was his traditional striker role. And he performed it brilliantly. And the application of it was still the same. So it's somebody that gives us a level of flexibility in our 11s that can get us out of trouble if we need to, right? So that's really the benefit that I'm seeing with Kai Havertz. As much as his, running his application and, even in the press right now, he had to do the really tough job of basically replacing Martin Odegaard out of possession. And what Martin Odegaard gives us in terms of driving with the ball and in the press rather, took a lot more of a team approach to that. But I think when we had a look at it, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at it back, but in terms of our press, it was a lot more. It was still man to man, but it was a little bit more zonal. There definitely was a 4-4-2 kind of mid block that we were doing, and instead of really committing to the man to man press consistently, it was still a case of like picking our moments. And I felt like Jorginho did a lot of work organizing the press from behind, but it was Kai Havertz and his ability to kind of bend runs to force play differently is how we ended up working Spurs back line. And that's really what Martin Odegaard does in the press. He isn't somebody that goes to win the ball, Martin Odegaard, right? He is somebody that leads with incessant running, guides, almost like a shepherd dog, kind of guiding the sheep to an area into the pen, and somebody else engages. And that's something that Kai Havertz did really well yesterday. And I think our press was really something to look at. It was really interesting. I thought on goal kicks, we were really quite aggressive on them. And we saw moments when Van de Ven got his pocket picked because we were able to go man to man. But we didn't press that trigger or push that button very often. I mean, when we did, it was incredibly successful. And it's why I really wish, looking back, right, I just wish we had more fit players, mate, because I just look at the game plan and I know Mikel wanted to suffocate with a really intense press. But obviously we couldn't do it. But I think Kai Havertz was really important in terms of what many people may have seen as a conservative approach. I felt like Kai was really key, as well as others. Gabriel Martinelli, when you talk about him claiming like 6 dribbles out of 8, you have to talk about the defensive output that he put in along with Bukayo Saka. There were moments when it wasn't just a 4-4-2, but we became a 5 at the back and 3 in midfield and 2 up top. Like there was definitely times that I felt like those 2 wingers were unbelievably committed. That's all I can say. I think Gabriel Martinelli showed a lot of signs of returning back to some more earlier season form of last year. And when you have a look at it, the miss is so stark. It's very much the case of Thomas Partey. Remember how we were discussing Thomas Partey a couple podcasts ago, and I was saying, listen, have a look at his overall performance in terms of in possession. There's going to be a really dumb mistake that's burning in people's minds, but have a look at the general play. Have a look at what he's actually provided in terms of output, and it's actually not as bad reading as what you might think. I think the same applies to Gabriel Martinelli in this performance. Yeah. He was very good. And one of the things that he didn't do well in was the final action, which is what makes everybody so angry because it's such a clear chance. And it's actually something that I feel that a lot of people critique him for, right? So once he gets into the final third, it can be indecisive. And the one thing that I'll say is I think that you do end up needing to become, or at least add a little bit more instinct towards his play. And I think once you add those things, you're going to start to see something or someone that's going to rediscover some of his more potent goal scoring form. But right now, I thought it was a very good performance. I thought it wasn't even just good. I thought that it was really aggressive and for once, really purposeful. I think he was positive in possession, which is not something that I've always felt of Gabriel Martinelli in the last couple games. Not even just the last couple games, but really even last season. There was times that he was too conservative, too willing to recycle. And I understand because he was isolated. But here he was very positive, taking on his fullback, going on the outside, willing to put in crosses as well. There was definitely an intent for Gabriel Martinelli to penetrate that back line. And then he did an unbelievable amount of work defensively. So I thought he had an incredibly good performance, actually.
Yeah. No, it was a good performance. And I think the front line in general was, as you said, very industrious off the ball. And I think that's very important in games like this because, and next week as well against Man City, because at times you won't be able to provide the X factor, but can you still do the hard work? And actually, I think Alex made a good point about Sterling coming off the bench and seeing at the high level we are off the ball. And Raheem's played for Man City, by the way, in the past. But even he struggled. He didn't know what to be, how to track back, how intense we are, in terms of every time we lose the ball, if the player on the ball isn't decisive within the first 5 seconds, we're back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that confidence in the team of, if we give the ball away and make a mistake, this players just surrounding yourself. There's a sea of red coming back. We saw against Leicester all those years ago when these Arsenal players' work rates is actually insane. And the buy-in from the players as well to buy into Mikel Arteta's tactics that badly is because it shows how badly they want to win as well. And also I want to praise Jorginho. I don't think he was outstanding by any means, but to come in a game like this and do a job is all he had to do. We had two basically uncles in midfield, and we found a way to beat Spurs. And let's not forget, Spurs are basically full strength. Apart from Basuma, everyone's fit and available, and yet they couldn't, really lay a glove on us in that second half when the going got tough. And I think Jorginho was very important in terms of cutting the lanes off, in terms of just giving us a bit of composure at times as well. But I don't think he was outstanding. I won't go out and say he deserves to start against Man City, but he was asked to do a role that he's not used to doing, playing on the left as well, playing in a pivot alongside Thomas Partey. And I think next week now, with Declan Rice fit and available again, having him next to Partey will be massive in the game against Man City and gives him more confidence as well. And we'll see what happens with Odegaard. I'm not sure with Odegaard right now, by the way, because they said he's going to be out for a long period of time. But there's no reports to confirm that so far. Mikel is very secretive of they were still kind of making rumours that he might be available for this game, kind of thing. Of we don't know if Odegaard's available or not. So do you reckon it's better than what people expected with Odegaard, or is it just a really bad injury that Arsenal are trying to hide from the media?
I think that I don't know. I mean, I think things can go both ways. You can look at it in a positive coin, or you can look at it in a negative coin. I prefer to just be really objective about it and just tell you from my experience and, knowing a little bit about sports injuries. It's really simple. There's different grading systems. There's 3 grades. And 1 being what you want and 3 being the worst. And grade 1, inversion sprain, which is what Martin Odegaard did, when you just roll the ankle on your inside. It's the technical term is just an inversion, and essentially what it is it can be a daily progression. And typically you look at 7 to 10 days to really get over a sprain of that nature, which is really low impact. And that's the timeline. We're at that point. It's been a week, and you don't hear news. So it's very possible he's fine, but at the same time, it does make me lead. I think it's a little bit more serious than just a grade 1 and a daily look at. And I think the next one's grade 2, simply about 4 to 6 weeks is really the time frame that you're looking at in that. And that normally comes with a scan, and that's why they're doing it. So just to let people know, the reason why it's delayed, it has nothing to do with the pain or even the severity of the injury. It could still be a grade 1, and they can't do scans because of the swelling. The imaging doesn't show up. So, I mean, as long as the swelling's there, you just can't do it. So it's kind of more of a logistic thing. It has nothing to do with how long he'd be out for. But then if you get to a grade 3, it's about an 8-week plus process. That's when you've actually ruptured a ligament, you've torn something, and that's very clear on a scan. That's actually not something you can be like, oh, how long is it going to be? I don't know. If you've torn a ligament, it's definitely over 8 weeks that you're looking at. And they would know that by now, is something that I'll say. And by the way, I will say Arsenal know what Martin Odegaard's timeline is. They're choosing not to release that. Is that good news? Is that bad news? That's up to you to decide. But they know what's happening.
Keep people guessing, man. If you're imagining you're the opposition side and you don't know if Martin Odegaard's fit, and he just turns up in the next game, he's available. Imagine how much of an impact that could have on their game plan.
100%. I suspect Arsenal to be coy up till Man City. I think after Man City, when you've got Bolton, you've got Leicester, you've got your Southamptons, you look at the fixture schedule, it becomes a little bit more manageable, respectfully. And I think that this is a big week. You've got the derby. You're able to get through. You got Atalanta, you've got City. It's not an easy schedule. So I think
it's not.
So I think being coy on that is purposeful. I mean, mate, we haven't even really talked about it. The whole time about the derby, we had 6 major injuries. Our starting midfield is out. You've got Calafiori out. There was a lot. Our bench was Hale End. It really was Sterling, Jesus, and Hale End, right? So I mean, yeah, there's we got through it in terms of Spurs and everything, but I don't think the club will release information on Martin Odegaard, like confirming things until after City, personally. I think they will
Yeah.
remain to be coy. And I think you might see we're still evaluating Martin Odegaard, something along those lines when they already
Do
know
you?
what's happening.
How do you feel we coped without him though? Do you think there was a severe miss there? Because with how well Kai did on the right hand side, helping Bakayo out as well, and even though Ben White struggled at times, I think at times maybe our press was a bit off without Odegaard, and there would be space opening up behind Saka that no one was closing down. But in the grand scheme of things, do you think we missed Odegaard that much, especially going ahead of Atalanta and City?
I think that what Martin Odegaard does for the team, you'll always feel an impact. However, what I'll say is against opponents that are incredibly physical, against a team that's going to be incredibly physical in transition, and against a team like, again, Atalanta, as well as Manchester City, teams that will, how do I put this? Teams that will um, have the ball, want to press, and be ball dominant, and you're going to be forced into more defensive positioning. I mean, that's something that you're going to look at Martin Odegaard and say that he leads the press, but you're not going to miss the major influence that he's got in possession because you're not going to have the ball as much. And so,
Yeah,
the team is just naturally by the game state about defending a little bit more, not going to miss that defensive presence as much. And I will say this, one of the critiques I have of Martin Odegaard is against physical midfields. There's a tendency for him to not have the influence that I think he should have. I look at past performances against Everton, against Palace, things like that. I still think that if you push Martin Odegaard around, there is a chance that he can get bullied in the middle of the park with significant pressure. And I think these types of games are going to apply that pressure. So right now, that's okay. The problem is when you start to add the 5 injuries on top of that, then obviously is a significant impact on the team and no Declan Rice and whatnot. So that's for me a bigger issue. But Martin Odegaard in singularity, we're going to miss him more for the Leicester than we are for City.
Oh wow.
We're going to miss him
But
more for Southampton and those ones.
yeah,
Like we're going to miss him on stubborn low blocks and stubborn mid blocks that we're struggling to score
yeah,
with. I really trust Arsenal in big games, especially away. You look at the away record of Arsenal in this season alone, it's been kind of incredible, to be honest with you.
Villa Park, Spurs away. In total, 2024, 10 away wins, 1 draw, 0 losses, and 11 games. 3 goals conceded, 30 goals scored, I think. And not a single second spent trailing. I mean, that's incredible.
No, it is incredible. And it's I don't know, mate. It's definitely something to be proud of. And I think you look at the home record. It's really ironic. Most people say the home record is where you're going to try to be a bully, but honestly, away day Arsenal are bullies,
Yeah.
and
We actually are.
they are a frightening proposition for any team. And it's
It's fine
actually
away.
odd. I probably trust. No, not even probably. I do trust away day Arsenal more than I do home day Arsenal.
Yeah, yeah.
And
We seem to
it's
be more emotional at the Emirates.
well, you know what it is? I definitely think that there's more onus to highlight the in possession stuff, and we're just fundamentally a better out of possession team.
Yeah.
And I think that away days, they force you to be a little bit more on the counter, a little bit more
And
less.
fans are more accepting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So just the nature of away days suits our team brilliantly. You've got big monsters at the back, which I definitely want to ask you a question because we've talked a lot about Martin Odegaard, Kai Havertz, Martinelli. We haven't talked about our big boy center backs. They deserve the praise for the derby, personally.
Mm-hmm.
What did you make of the center back partnership in the derby? And then, because I think both had their moments of individual
Yeah.
brilliant quality. Saliba post the yellow card, how he performed despite having that, and then
Yeah.
you even got Gabriel in terms of what he's giving us, not just on set pieces, which he continues to do. I'd love for maybe somebody watching can do this analysis. But have a look at consistently how many goals that Gabriel has scored for Arsenal as a center back.
15 since 2020. The
Yeah,
most out of anyone in Europe.
it's incredible. It's an outlier, and we just accept
Yeah.
it. And I know sometimes it may feel like it's a
And it's very
penalty
important.
shot with Spurs having a set piece, but I mean Gabriel has to do the work to create the separation on Romero there, who's just so weak. But yeah, he does this consistently. But anyways, I wanted to ask you, what do you make of the center back partnership? And how does it feel having that security for you, having watched old Arsenal teams of the past, right? We understand how great their quality is, but we potentially could be looking at look, all it needs is trophies, but we could be looking at the best center-back partnership that Arsenal have had when you start to look at their careers. Like, how are you feeling about that?
Quality-wise, 100% up there. I mean, Saliba is just, he's our insurance policy. And the best example is when we gave the ball away, I think Ben White gave the ball away to the Spurs player, Solanke, edge of the box. Saliba's there within like 5 seconds to jump in his face, to win the ball back straight away. And I think that's what he is. He's able to always recover. And that ability to recover is so important when we play a high line and play high stake games as well, because he's just got that pace. And I remember in the commentary, I think Neville was saying that Solanke might be doing it at one time, but I'm like, I don't really remember that at any point. Solanke outdoing Saliba, and that's just how he is. He's dominant and he's just composed. And every time he's on the ball and he tries to like dribble out a little bit, most centre backs will make a mistake. Saliba rarely ever does. He's just so perfect on the ball, and we know how good a player he is. And we talked about it. There's not much more I can even say about him, to be quite honest, because everything he does is just at the highest level, and we've talked about it so many times. I think Gabriel in the deep blocks it comes into his own. He's able to just block every single shot. Every time let's say an Arsenal player gets beaten, Gabriel's there to block it. How many saves does Raya have to make when Gabriel in front of him in these low blocks? I'm not even sure, because Gabriel's always in front of him, and he's like a massive wall there. And his goals, I think any team that wins a title, it's very important to have a goal scoring centre back. We've got almost 2. Saliba scores goals as well. But you look at, you got the Chelsea's great sides. You had John Terry scored important goals. For United, you had Vidic. You had goal scoring centre backs. Even Arsenal had Tony Adams scoring important goals. Gabriel scores important goals. And in a game like this as well, last year scored goals at Anfield away. This year, Spurs away. And those moments are very, very important, because if you don't have the X factor coming from the attackers and, that Haaland type of goal scorer, those set pieces become our moments. They become the X factor. And every time we get a corner, you Arsenal fans get very excited. They go, hang on a minute, if the delivery is fine here, we've got the height and power. And then you add Declan Rice back into it next week as well, with his power and his corner set piece delivery as well. It gives us an even better chance of scoring more corners. And I think if we go to City away, that's for me our most reliable way of creating a moment for me. Is, I know in terms of open play we can hit with the counter attack and show some moments of brilliance, but if we get a set piece, we can provide that moment of magic. And I'm
Can I
very
ask
excited
you,
to see
why do Arsenal get clowned, for better words, so I can use more admissible language, for set pieces, and why is it not sustainable? I mean, when you have a look at our record and you have a look at how consistently we've been able to create these situations, because it's not even just the goals. Like, obviously we've been scoring at an incredible rate, but I mean, it's the way that we consistently create separation. Does Nicholas Jover get enough praise? I mean, Mikel said he's the best in the business. I mean, he's been the best in the business for a while. But I've never understood this idea that it can't be sustainable and why that needs to be critiqued. I mean, I really think that people should be separating the conversation and saying, look, set pieces are an important part of our chance creation. And, that's not something to say that Arsenal are a poor attack. It's just one of the very many strong arrows that we've got in our bow. And it's consistent. And if it's going to consistently kill you, I'm not going to apologize for it. Like, that's on you to defend. For as much as we have time to prepare set pieces, you have equal amount of time to defend set pieces. And if many teams are going to consistently not defend set pieces, at some point, I don't care who you are, mate, you've got to sit there and say, praise it. It's sustainable.
No, you have to.
We've done it. How do you feel? How do you feel about that and that narrative, I guess, on set pieces and how
the narrative comes from the idea of Arsenal, not being our normal Arsenal selves. I think the image of Arsenal the last 10, 15 years has been passy, one-touch football. That Wilshere goal against Norwich is the best example. That's what fans think Arsenal are. Mikel Arteta has changed that. We can do that at times. We've seen it when Saka and Smith Rowe combined against West Brom all those years ago. We can do that when needed to be. But we're more about power now, and size and bullying. And I remember watching, when I was younger, I used to watch a lot of like Monday Night Football in the UK, so Sky Sports. And you used to have Gary Neville back in the day when you had Wenger's Arsenal go to away games and get bullied every single time. And he'd say, we missed the power of Vieira, we missed the power of Gilberto Silva. And I'd go, when are Arsenal going to have power again? So when I now see Declan Rice when he starts, I got Saliba and Gabriel, I got Havertz 6'5", I got Calafiori when he's fit and available as well. I like the idea of Arsenal being powerful and physical again, because it's our heritage. You look at Invincible side, Gilberto Silva, Henry, Patrick Vieira, these are all, Sol Campbell, all powerful monsters. And so I think the idea is that, Arsenal being too physical is like almost like Stoke City now. We're going for set pieces and long throws and that type of stuff, but it's a controlled environment. And if you've got a controlled environment that you get maybe 5-6 opportunities for a minimum per game, if you can make the most out of even one, why not? I'm surprised that teams don't take it as seriously, because there's a stigma around set pieces of is this if so it's for lower league sides or lower table sides that they have to take advantage of set pieces. But if you're a top side in those big games in the Champions League, you're at the Bernabeu where you're struggling for a goal, you get a corner, and you worked on this for so many times, you can provide yourself a moment of magic there. And we've seen some of the most important goals ever be from corners. You look at United's treble winning side, 2 goals from corners. So if corners get taken for granted in that game there, they don't want to treble. And we've seen it time and time again. So for Arsenal now taking advantage of that, I guarantee it, this is not the most... We'll have even more important goals this year. From centre-backs or players from corners this season. In games that we need a goal. You know, I remember even last year, there was a game against Crystal Palace where we had struggled pre-international break. Fulham we lost to, Liverpool we lost to as well. We couldn't score a goal. And it only took us a set piece from Gabriel to open the scoreline and get Arsenal settled. So I'm not taking for granted anyway, but I think the stigma is there because people feel being too physical is a bad thing nowadays, and you're more like Stoke than you are old school Arsenal. You've got power, physical ability, but also the technical ability to go and play you off the park as well.
I think you have to separate it, that if you want to critique Arsenal a little bit more for open play chance creation, support on both sides, those things, you can have that conversation and separate it. But to sit there and use set piece dominance as a way to, as like a stick to beat Arsenal with is consistently the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And I'm going to be a little bit stronger than you, mate. I mean, I call other teams lazy about it. This is just hard work and consistency of effort. I mean, nobody likes to train set pieces, and anybody that's sat there and has played the game, again, at any level, if you're a coach and you've been asked to train set pieces, it's a slog. No player wants to do it, but they've been bought in. And that's the difference. I mean, I'm not going to apologize for my team being more concentrated and hardworking than you. That's what you're telling me, that I have to apologize that my team's actually put the effort on something that is consistently good. We're consistently getting output from it, and that I should therefore apologize for it? Absolutely not. I should then say what? I'm not a very good attacking team, that set pieces don't count, dead ball situations don't count. If you really want to be technical about it, even if you're a really high scoring technical attack, you're going to get at most an XG of 3 to 4, correct? Like, that's a very high XG game. Now, how many corners are you going to get over the course of a match that you're really dominant in? At least 8 to 10. So if you really want to break it down for me on a number perspective, if you're going to sit there and tell me, okay, I want you dominating on the XG front. Okay, you're going to get me what? On a really high XG match, 3 to 4 XG goals? Cool, calm. That's 3 to 4 excellent opportunities. Meanwhile, I look at the average of a really dominant play. How many corners do you have, roughly? 7, 8, 9? Yeah. You have at least double the amount of chances on a dominant game in corners and set pieces. So I'm never going to apologize. From a pure number perspective, it just makes sense. You've got double the amount of chances. So, I mean, to put a lot of effort into that is great. I think it's just because people draw lines, because then they're saying, oh, so what you're saying is that we don't have to be a high chance creating machine in open play. No. That has nothing to do with it. Separate issue, separate critique, separate way to improve. But to sit there and to critique the set pieces is just beyond ridiculous.
I got the numbers from last season. We had an extra of 15 last year from corners. Just corners, not even set pieces, just corners. We created 15 goals from corners.
Yeah.
And they're not normal just like goals to, seal a game off. They could be important game state changing goals when you're in a tight game like you were yesterday, and they can win you 3 points.
Yeah. So
if you've got the ability to work on that in training, why don't you? And you're right, it's laziness. It is. Other teams just can't be asked. They have other things to focus on. And because Mikel Arteta's, working on every fine little margin, this is a prime example of that. Anything to win.
Yeah, and
if there's corners, we'll take care of corners. And how many years are Arsenal fans used to sit here and cry about Arsenal not being good at corners? Yeah. Oh, we can see too many corners. Oh, we don't score enough corners. I've seen United fans, when they score a corner, act like they've, won the league title because they don't score corners like that. But for Arsenal now, we are the most potent set piece side in Europe. And that for me is going to come very useful come the Champions League. I tell you right now, we're going to score some very important goals this year in the Champions League from corners. And, Nicolas Jovic is going to get more praise, rightly so.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you've got the numbers of how many we actually scored from that 15.
I think it's 16 or something.
16, yeah. So
16 goals.
Yeah, I mean,
take that.
Well, I'll ask you, what's that worth? I mean, you buy a player that gives you 16 goals across the season. Are you saying that they had a bad season? Like from every angle, like when I'm trying to get this analysis and I try to say, okay, I always ask myself when I'm in these debates, because I love debating, and I'm like, okay, let me actually put myself in your shoes. Like, what could I argue for you? Right? And I start to think to myself and I say, okay, the record could be lucky. I don't know. I think it's bullshit, but a lot of people start to say, okay, you know what? Maybe it's lucky. Maybe, it's set pieces and, you just have a tall team. And it's as simple as that. Um,
Mm.
well, no. I look at the amount that we're creating separate from everybody else, which is clear and far away from the pack. I'm looking at our success of that. And that could come from having very good aerial presences. But again, I'm not going to apologize for that. We've simply found a way to recruit to that point, and people are mad at it. I mean, we still have Calafiori as well as Mikel Merino to add to this. I mean, that's an important part. I mean, especially Mikel Merino, the number of aerial duels he won, the best aerial dueler in Europe and in kind of Europe's top 5 leagues, period. That's significant. And then you start to add Calafiori, who as well has a very good aerial presence as a center back. If you start to add that to the mix, we are a very tall teammate. And, again, I'm not going to apologize for Arsenal putting emphasis on something that people have ignored. And it comes down to simply saying, okay, not only are you creating double the amount of opportunities as everybody else, but also corners by nature will always be more plentiful than open play chances across the course of a game, especially for a dominant side that sustain pressure and pen the opposition back. If you're not a dominant side, then I can understand where XG becomes a really important part. And, I think open play chance creation, it's still an incredibly important part of a successful attacking side. And it's an important part of what I love as a fan to look at. So let's critique ways to improve it, but don't downplay an incredibly important thing that is giving us 16 goals across the course of a season, which, by the way, if you had any player, I don't care who it is, it could be Timo Werner, you insert whatever name that you think is crap, and you prop up 16 goals next to that imaginary person's name, I don't care what kind of fan you are, you're saying, very good season. Very good season. And that's it.
Massive.
And that's all you have to say. Very good on set pieces. Let's improve a little bit elsewhere.
Yeah, that's what it is. And I think that size and power, all the players you named there, they're all very technical as well. So you're not sacrificing anything technically. They're all fantastic. Like, look at Calafiori. Have you seen him play at the Euros? That guy's dribbling out like he's 5'7". You know what I mean? And he's able to do it at 6'3". If you can do that, these guys are freaks of nature. We've got them our club, so I'm very excited to see that. And now I'm not going to say this guy's a freak of nature, but talent-wise, he's really, really good. Ethan Nwaneri, 10 minutes off the bench. But hey, the way Arsenal fans are propping him now, you could just sense something's thrown there. It doesn't feel like a normal youngster. It doesn't feel like a normal Arsenal youngster, apart from Saka and Smith Rowe, where he's just kind of playing a minute for the sake of it. Mikel Arteta throwing him on in the North London derby. Yes, he might be forced because of Saka's injury, but still throwing him on in a massive game like this, and him also performing to a level where you can see he's a part of the first team now. Ethan against Atalanta, would you potentially start him?
Definitely.
Wow.
I think that game needs to be rotated. I said it in previous pods that it needs to be a free pass, and I'm very focused on Manchester City. I have a lot more expectation on City as well. I'm not going to lie. I don't care how we do it. I want a win. I think that is the most important barrier. We've already crossed the making them bleed and win. I mean, we beat City more than any team last year, period. And by the way, the amount of times that we faced them, I mean, we never lost. City were the ones that have lost.
2 wins, 1 draw.
Yeah. Exactly.
Didn't concede, apart from obviously the Community Shield.
100%. We've won basically every game against them except at their ground, and I think that is definitely a hoodoo that I want broken. So in preparation for that, I don't think you can play your strongest team and ask them to run as much at Atlanta after having had a very physical match at the North London derby. I'm playing him. I think Ethan just needs to develop, mate. And, Ethan will always have grace with the fans because he's one of those technical footballers. And I do say this with the utmost respect. Anybody that's technical and is a baller and got a little bit of tech, they get grace with fans, fundamentally. On any type of player. I don't care who you are. If you look good while playing football, in terms of having a fluid half turn, in terms of being like a tricky dribbler, you get grace no matter how bad some of the decisions might be or whatnot. And I'm not saying that he had bad decisions, by the way. I'm just saying I think part of the reason why fans are really excited about him is, yes, he's a really good mental profile, a really good footballer. It's clear. He's one of those footballers that you see, I don't have to watch him long to see that he has it. That's the comment that everybody will make when they have it. And a lot of that has to do with that technical aesthetic that he brings, where you just look at it and you see you were born to play kind of thing. So he'll get the grace there. The one thing that I wanted to highlight is that physical capacity. I mean, that ability to continue his run and not lose power. Much. Yeah, and deal with contact. And I think that's the special quality that a lot of these Hale End boys are going to come in with recently. And it's really the biggest difference that I've noticed in the recruitment classes, where I think Arsenal have always produced quote unquote technical ballers. That's always been something that Arsenal are okay doing. Something that I
Yeah,
don't think that we've always done is pair that with a physical durability to last in terms of content or contact rather, in terms of running into space and in terms of just dealing with the physical demands of adult football. That's been something that some Hale End grads in the past have really struggled with, right? These boys, in terms of Miles, in terms of Ethan, they excel in that category. And that's what's going to really make the difference. I think Ethan, the only thing that he's missing, mate, is pressing triggers and organization off the ball, understanding. And that comes from playing in an environment like ours, right? Like he's got the best coach to teach those things, but those are the things that he's missing. In terms of what you're going to teach Ethan on the ball, you're not going to teach Ethan anything on the ball. In terms of actually making the right decision in the final third, in terms of leading the tempo of a team, he's got all the qualities that you would like. There's nothing that I'm going to tell you that will shock you about how much I rate Ethan Nwaneri, but I think what I rate the most amongst his mentality as well as his footballing ability is his athletic capacity to really continue running in the sprint. That's really different. You don't see that with 17-year-olds often. And I think that's the scope that really becomes different when you're looking at grads to transition to an adult game, is how they can deal with the physical demands of a new level of football. Because at their level, typically, the reason that they've been played up is because they're so far and away clear. They've got such a unique ability. They never have to really
mm,
test that physical capacity
yeah,
and that physical potential. So when they transition, those are the biggest questions that people ask, especially adults, by the way. And in a North London derby, I got roasted on X when I said I really felt this wasn't a game to start Ethan in. And I think you have to look at the environment. And I think that it was brilliant management to have him come on as a cameo. And his first really big start that we see from a 90 of Ethan has to, in my opinion, come in a cup, has to come in something that's not title deciding, which is why I felt
yeah,
like
true.
Atalanta is a perfect time to do it. Bolton, Leicester, even. I would even be more willing to see Ethan start against Leicester. It has nothing to do with me thinking that Ethan can't start now. He can start now, but the environment matters and you only arrive once. That's the only thing I'll
Yeah,
say on
no,
Ethan
that's
as a
true.
grad.
Yeah, and he's 17. That's
Yeah.
that's the key part. So there's generally going to be mistakes, and you can't stop that 17-year-old. But we've seen in well where Yamal come through at Barcelona at 17. You had Zaire Emery come through at PSG as well. More and more young players are breaking through, and Ethan feels like he's a part of that category. And that's why I'm so excited to see him play more and more minutes. And I think Mikel will start him. Maybe not Atalanta, I'm not sure, but he'll start him in games this season. And we've not seen a youngster come through the Arsenal Academy since, what, maybe Saka and Smith Rowe. I actually played a part of the
That
first team,
class, right? The
you know?
Eddie
Yeah,
Reese class. Like
yeah.
it was
Eddie
a
Reese
successful
class.
class.
Yeah. You missed the other class before that, where you had the Miguel Azizes and Charlie Patinos. They've all left now. And now you're talking about Ethan Wanyer breaking to the side. And you can see the off the ball work. Because I think the most impressive thing for most Arsenal fans was, and this just shows our mentality of fan base now, is that block on Son in the final minutes.
Yeah.
I think that was what fans go, okay, cool, check. Yeah, he can do that. Because we know on the ball, like he's not scared to demand it. And that's what I'm saying. He's picking the ball up in a Northern derby against top players. And he's going, give me the ball. I'm dropping you to the floor. I think it was Papa Maisar. And I'm going forwards with it. And if Havertz was on side, he could have played him on side and got an assist as well. So it's very exciting, I'll be honest. And that's why going forwards to the next game, George, Atalanta, it's massive, isn't it? Because it's a game which is not going to be easy. These Europa League champions, Adamo Lukman and Gasperini, the manager as well. Very high pressing. We've seen it in the Europa League final. And it's going to be require a lot of running. So in terms of the players on the Arsenal bench in this game, and the returning Declan Rice as well, maybe, would you start Rice straight away? Would you throw in Nwaneri? Would you throw in Sterling, Jesus? These players to bring into the side. Even Kivior maybe haven't played in Italy in the past.
There's 100% a change 11 that what I'm doing,
Oh
and I'm
wow.
doing as many changes as I can personally. Um, you know, uh, I maybe somebody that I think people may not expect. And I mean, have we even got any news on Calafiori? I really was surprised not to see him even on the bench, and I didn't think that
Yeah.
injury was really significant. You know,
I don't
um,
know.
so I don't know. It really depends there. But if he's fit, I would love to see Calafiori start Atlanta.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Kivior start at left center back. Um, it sucks that we don't have Tomiyasu, but I would have wanted a completely rotated 11, and I think that we will have to play Saliba unfortunately.
Yeah.
And but I would look at right back, and I'd give Ben White a rest, and I'd have Yuri and Timber play at right back
Yeah.
for me, and I'd play that with Calafiori and Timber as the fullbacks. I want to see how that does, and then I'd have a look. I'd definitely play Jorginho again, and I'd actually play Thomas Partey. I wouldn't play Declan Rice. I wouldn't start Declan Rice. I would have Rice coming in maybe in the last 20 minutes to just give him a run. But I think his legs are going to be incredibly important for City. And so I want to make sure that's good. And I would play Gabriel Martinelli. I would play Jesus, and I would play Sterling and give Saka a rest. I mean, for me, that's also a very high pressing front three. Martinelli, Jesus, Sterling. Have them do a lot of the hard yards, because I have a look at City, and I think Sterling needs to also understand the system a little bit more personally. He definitely looked, there were moments that, he kind of ran into blind alleys, but he definitely looked like, oh, here at Arsenal, we have to press kind of thing. And so he was willing, by the way. It wasn't that he wasn't willing and he wasn't unable.
He's done it for Man City before.
Yeah. Like, he's done it before. There wasn't a case of like, oh, what are you doing? But there was definitely a moment. I don't know if you saw, like, he would go forward and then he's just like this.
It's just like, mate,
you got to get a.
Like, he wasn't looking on the touchline going.
Yeah, it's like, mate, I'm sorry, but here we don't just give you freedom to do whatever you want. So
no.
And I think he just needs games to learn the system. He's obviously had 2 weeks of like personal coaching. He knows the triggers, but I think he just needs to understand his teammates a bit more and start to build that relationship. So I'm happy for him to start. I'm happy for Jesus to start. I feel like we haven't seen minutes from him. And I think as far as Gabriel Martinelli goes, the more minutes I can give him to turn that really good play into goals is important. I got to play him through these good performances. Don't take him out. Give him the support. And with Calafiori as my left back, who's giving him a little bit more of an overlapping presence, I'm a little bit more willing to see what that does for us.
Yeah, and goals can change confidence. That's what it is, and I think that's one that he needs. He needs some goals to go in for him, some luck to go his way.
What would you do on Atalanta? Like, are you going a fully... Like, mine's pretty much a fully rotated 11, mine.
Yeah. I think Mikel will keep certain players in, so Saliba for me will still start. I think because Calafiori won't be fit, he'll play Ben White right back and Timber left back. So I think there's a chance that the back four, apart from Gabriel, maybe changes a little bit. You got to have Ryan's definitely going to start. I don't know if he can start Neto and goal for this game, but midfield wise, I think he'll go for Rice personally. I think he'll start Rice, having seen rest for the weekend and throw him, because obviously this game requires so much running as well. Maybe rest Thomas Partey, because he played quite a lot of games, in terms of international break, playing against obviously Tottenham as well for 90 minutes. Maybe rest Partey, play Rice alongside Jorginho, like we see work in the past. And then of course you've also got Nwaneri potentially starting for me as well. And front three, I think Saka deserves a rest, especially after getting going off against Spurs with cramp. And then you got Raheem Sterling at the start there. Jesus can play on the right hand side as well. And I think Gabriel Martinelli starts as well. And you got off the bench then, if the game's not working out, Trossard, Havertz, and players change the game as well. And Saka is off; he's off the bench. So I think it will be changed. Maybe not as much as we think it will be, because Mikel likes to almost slowly change the side. But if he changes it completely, it will show a new sign of him, because we've not seen Mikel change lineups that much. But we've seen it this season where in certain games where he trusts Timber over Zinchenko, he'll take out Zinchenko and throw in Timber. And I think that's very important as well. But a lot of injuries right now. I think we have missing 8 players. Cini, Tomiyasu, Saka's obviously got cramp as well. Odegaard's out for God knows how long. Rice is suspended as well. Marino as well. So with those players to come back to the side as well, I think we've got a strong enough squad in my eyes. Even in this game here, having so many players missing, yet still able to provide a performance and provide such a good starting lineup in my eyes, was good. It's a good sign with that many players missing as well. And I think I'm excited to see how we go to Atalanta away, because away games are not always easy, but for Arsenal, it seems to be the case.
I don't think my wanted lineup will be what we do. I really think we'll definitely have the box 4 of, for me, Gabriel, Saliba, Jorginho, Partey. I don't think that'll change.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, you may have Declan.
Do you think Partey deserves a rest though?
I mean, I wouldn't play him versus City though. So that's the thing.
Oh, you wouldn't play him against City?
I don't know if I'd play him versus City.
Oh, wow.
I'd have to see how he is. I think that's a game that I'm still debating between Jorginho and Partey, especially with how we want to play, because I think with Declan Rice, you've got the more conservative tough tackler with big spaces already there. And I think it really depends on what kind of fullbacks that we want to play with Manchester City. So if you've got Jorginho, I'm not as worried about him athletically if I'm pairing it with a Calafiori, for example, that's there, or even a Timber. Like, there's ways to hide that. And especially for me, I think we're going to end up really pressing and having to defend a lot. And for me, Thomas Partey, if anything, has done really well in possession, but out of possession has been something that I've had questions recently with. So I think Jorginho's done really well in terms of anticipating the press, and he's really intelligent in the press. So it's not a game that I think that we're defending big spaces. I think it'll be a very much a low block game against City.
Yeah.
And it'll be very similar to the year before. We'll play on the counter, but this time we actually have outlets to hit. And as far as that goes, in terms of who can hit those outlets consistency-wise, I think Jorginho is something that I place a little bit more reliance on. So it's definitely something I'm debating. I'm not convinced yet that Partey's not playing, but that's why I'm thinking, regardless, I think he doesn't change the middle.
Yeah.
Anyways, like, I think that 4 gives Mikel solidity, and it's just a question of whether or not you want to give Rice minutes. And for me, I just want to save him a bit. And, Rice hasn't had the best of starts to the season.
No.
So
But he had a very good international break.
Yeah. So that's just somebody I'm more willing to rest, let's say. Jorginho and Partey, for me, let's put it this way. Those are 2 players that I don't believe will be starters for very long. Yeah. And so I'd rather overload their minutes and then look at the squad elsewhere and start to say, okay, Declan's one of my most important performers. He's going to need to have that rest at some point. If I can rest him, rest him. That's my mentality. Same with Bukayo Saka. I mean, you're going to tell me, like, for example, it's a very top side with Atalanta. Why aren't you starting Bukayo Saka, George? Well, I mean, this is about Mikel being very proactive with injuries. Let's put it this way. This is why I would like such a changed 11, because there's going to be moments in the season that we're not afforded this. And we're not afforded this ability to rest. I'm looking at Christmas, and I'm looking at towards the back end of the season. We have a very tough title run in. I think that's the time that we won't be able to rest. And I need to give legs throughout the season. So there's going to be times that I'm going to have to make decisions about it. And I just feel that we have enough there. And that's a very strong 11 that I've named personally. I mean, Calafiori, Kivior, Saliba, Timber, Jorginho, Partey, Martinelli, Jesus, Sterling. That's an experienced very well in the Champions League, by the way. So, I'm missing a player. I'd probably put Trossard in that 11 as well. And, not Trossard. I'd probably have to make Kai come into that game, just because I feel like he's one of our most durable players, and I don't love doing it. But Saka needs rest more than anybody in that 11.
No, he does.
So,
he does.
Yeah.
It's a very exciting week. Atalanta away, City away. You obviously had Spurs away, 3 away games in a row. But look, we've got the away form on our side. And if we can top it up by getting a result at Atalanta away and beating City away,
what does that do for you?
A lot of Arsenal fans.
Like, what does that do for you?
I think for me, I'm already like very much on the belief that this is the year. But if you go and beat City and go over that hurdle, I think it's like not a guarantee, of course, but it feels like more certain than ever before. That we've gone to City away. Bear in mind, we probably won't have Martin Odegaard, but without your captain, basically, you've gone to City away. If you can get a win and get another result against those guys and make it, 4 games unbeaten, especially with the form they're in as well. They've started the season off pretty well in terms of goal scoring wise. If we can shut off Haaland now, if you got Gabriel and Saliba able to hold him off again, because in previous games, he's been able to get, an XG of 0.0. Like, he can't even get a shot off against Arsenal. So it's like the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. And we're going to see who comes out on top again, because he's in great form now. He's banging in goals for fun, or hat-tricks and doubles galore. But if we can stop him now again, it's a statement, isn't it? Because, last year it was at the stage of the year where we went for a result, we got a result, but it didn't quite work out, we fell short. We're at the stage of the year now where we could still go for get a result and get 4 points out of 6 against Spurs and City away. That's a fantastic return, by the way. But if you're able to just get over the line somehow, get a set piece, bang in a corner from Gabriel Saliba, could you imagine the shockwaves it sent around the Premier League, in general? Who was the last team to beat City away? I can't even think of it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't happen often. And I think we've already done, like, if people want to critique the manner in which we get the win, I'm not willing to hear it. I mean, we've had wins against them last year in terms of us performing and being very creative. The only time that we really went that defensive was at the Etihad, by the way. And
Yeah,
most teams do that. And I'm completely happy with choosing one or two times a match where I'm going to play negatively to get a result, if it means that I'm going to get the points that I really need and to really strike the
yeah,
blow that we need to strike. I mean, at this point, again, I really don't think, I think that and Anfield are the only grounds that really is a hoodoo, something that we haven't proven on away day Arsenal are so good. Those are the only two tests that I think deserve, by the way, you playing differently too. Anfield and City away. And Madrid. There's very few teams in world football that I would add to that list, but I mean, there's going to be two or three times a season that you're not going to play your preferred style of play, and that's okay. When it becomes a pattern and it
yeah,
becomes you consistently doing it against opposition that you're better than or that you feel are you're at your level, then that's a problem for me. But
yeah,
when you have teams that have such high quality and grounds that have such high quality, like the Bernabeu, Anfield, City, those are big teams. Those are big games. Those are big moments. I have no problem with you adjusting your approach to win there. It's smart.
hmm yeah, yeah. We're gonna see. Important week, George. Do you reckon we'll get 2 wins out of 2? Will be a draw? What's your like predictions? Because we've just beaten Spurs away, so confidence is high, but it's a limited squad right now. And it's two
Mm.
very tough away games. Europa League champions and Premier League champions.
I think that Arsenal and just Premier League teams do really well against Serie A teams. For as much as I
Okay.
really rate Gasperini, and I think that they're a top team and they're a top pressing side, so they'll actually be probably the most analogous Serie A team to a Premier League team that we're going to face.
Yeah.
Um, I think that we'll do well. I think we'll get a result against Atalanta, but I think City is the one where I really question, and City completely depends on for me on who's available. Um, like we're getting Rice back. Do we get Calafiori back? Do we get anybody else back? Like we're gonna need every ounce of juice to
Yeah.
win that match.
The
That's the
magic.
only match in the league campaign. Let me be clear. Away at the Etihad is the only match that you're gonna see me say I don't know. I'm so confident in pretty much every other match that that's the one match that I just cannot tell you. Yeah, we're going 2 for 2 and do the chest like that. I think there's a really good possibility we can do something, but I need to see
Yeah.
who's there, and
Who's
we'll have a
available?
preview in that time. We'll have
Okay.
a pod
Well,
to
we'll get to
review,
that.
and we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But for now, massive game this Thursday against Atalanta. It's weird to see Champions League games on Thursdays, by the way. I don't know if it works
Yeah.
out, but it is what it is. So, George, pleasure as always. Guys, smash a like and subscribe as always and give us the famous Cannon Podcast outro.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for all the support. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and if you want to explore more content, you can hit the Patreon down in the description below. But thanks for all your support. We really appreciate it. And thanks to the boys for giving me a really happy work week. It's excellent to win on North London Victory Days. So you love to see it. But yeah, thanks guys for showing up. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Peace.